And that's when I saw them moving. The trees were shifting their weight. Not swaying, you understand. Shifting. Like bones settling in a grave. The fog had come in thick by then, thick as cotton soaked in copper, and I couldn't see my hands in front of my face. But I could hear 'em, all of 'em, breathing. Every silver bark was breathing, and the sound was like wind through a mouth that wasn't quite right, like wind through teeth. And I knew they were close. I knew I shouldn't have opened that gate. I knew it before I ever came here somehow. In my bones, in my blood. And now the gate won't close. Now listen careful, friend. Listen to what I tell you. My name is Thomas Graves. That's the truth of it. And I won't lie to you in this telling. I inherited something in the autumn of '94, though I didn't know what I was inheriting until I stood in the hanging valley and felt the air change around me like a hand settling on my shoulder. A letter came to my apartment in Louisville, Kentucky. Small envelope, yellow paper, the kind they don't make anymore. The kind that's been treated with something to keep it from aging. But it had aged anyway. The ink was faded to a brown that looked like dried blood under certain light. I should have burned it then. The letter was from my uncle, a man I'd never met, though I'd heard whispers about him at family gatherings. The whispers stopped when I was young enough to wonder why. My mother would change the subject. My grandmother would leave the room. He was dead, the letter said. Had been dead for near about 8 months before it reached me. The property was mine now. All the holdings, all the land, all the things he'd kept up there in that hanging valley, tucked between 2 ridge lines where the fog never quite burned away and the sun came down like something that didn't want to be there. There was an address, a map, hand-drawn, very precise, and at the bottom of the letter, in a shaking hand that looked like it was written by someone in great pain, 3 words: keep the gate locked. I drove up there on a gray day. You know the kind I'm talking about, friend. The kind of day where the clouds hang so low they look like a ceiling, and the world feels like it's got walls. The road wound up into the ridgelines, and the trees on either side got closer the higher I climbed. Closer and taller, seeming to lean in toward the road like they were trying to get a better look at me. The property was set back off the main road, down a long drive lined with what I thought were birch trees at first. White bark, silver bark. I came to understand later that that was what made them different. That was what marked them as something other. The main house was old, but maintained, not neglected. That was the first strange thing about it. There was money up there. There was care. But the windows were all curtained, and the porch had a weight to it, like it was holding something down. The autumn air up there was different, colder than it should have been, even that early in the season. And there was a smell, copper, like I said, but underneath that was something green and damp and old. The smell of soil that hasn't seen the sun in a very, very long time. The smell of fruit rotting on branches that nobody's been meant to pick from. I found the key in the mailbox. It was waiting for me, I think. Everything was waiting for me. Inside the house was dust and shadow. But not abandoned shadow, the kind of shadow that comes from closed curtains, not from emptiness. The furniture was arranged precise, no water rings on the tables, no fallen picture frames. Someone had been keeping this place, or something had. I found the study on the second day. I'd spent the first night in the main bedroom, and I'd heard sounds like something moving in the walls, or like the walls moving. I didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, listening to the wind outside. And I tried to reason with myself. I tried to tell myself that the wind makes sounds when it moves through old houses, that old houses settle, that mice make noise. But there was something underneath all that, something rhythmic, something that almost sounded like it was keeping time with my heartbeat. But I knew it wasn't. I knew it was keeping time with something else. The study was lined with books, journals mostly, in the same handwriting as a letter, my uncle's handwriting. Written over years, getting shakier as the years went on. There was a desk, and on the desk was a leather-bound ledger. I opened it. The pages were organized like rules, like instructions. The handwriting was precise, almost clinical, until the later entries, when it became desperate, when the letters started breaking apart mid-word. The first rule was written at the top of the first page, in ink that looked fresh, though I knew it had to be years old. Do not touch the fruit if it is warm. Below that, in different ink, different handwriting, it is always warm. And below that, in red ink, check for the feeling in your teeth. If you feel itching in your teeth, do not pick that fruit. Something is using it as a hive. I'm going to tell you the rest of the rules now. I'm going to tell them slow so you can understand them proper. Rule number 2. Leave the gate open for those who have no hands. They will come in the fog. They will not knock. They will not speak. You will know them by the sound they make, dragging themselves through the fallen leaves. Rule number 3. The silver barks have thoughts. They do not think like you and I think. They think in the way of things that have been rooted to one place for longer than there have been people with your name. Do not watch them for too long. Do not let them watch you. Rule number 4. The harvest comes in October. You will hear it before you see it. The sound is like someone breathing through the soil. When the harvest comes, the gate must be open, or the trees will open it themselves. Rule number 5. If you find fruit with the mark of the thumb, a dark thumbprint on the skin, bury that fruit deep and mark the place with stones arranged in a circle. Do not ever go back to that place. The later entries, they weren't organized anymore. They were scattered through the book like fever dreams written down in the dark. The youngest one is learning my name. I can hear it in the way the leaves move when I walk past. Not all the leaves, just certain trees. It's learning slowly. I have maybe 3 months before it says it right. And another. I made a mistake today. I picked a fruit I shouldn't have. It tasted like water that had been standing in a metal cup for 7 summers. My tongue went numb. Now I can hear things I don't want to hear. The trees underneath the soil, the roots, they talk to each other through the earth. They're making plans. I don't know what the plans are, but I know they include the gate. They include what comes through the gate. The last entry was dated a week before the letter came to me. The handwriting was so bad I could barely read it. It looked like it had been written in the dark, or written by someone whose hands were shaking so bad the pen barely touched paper. It's here, the thing that comes through the gate. I opened it yesterday because I heard them. I heard the ones with no hands dragging through the leaves. And I opened it, and I screamed. But the one that came through wasn't one of the ones with no hands. It was something else. It had hands. Too many hands. And they were small, like children's hands. But the fingers were too long, and they bent backwards. It walked past me and went to the north tree, the largest one, and it laid all of its hands on the trunk, and the tree opened. The tree opened like a mouth, and I saw something inside it. I saw something looking back at me. I'm going to the church in the morning. I'm going to ask them to do something about this. If they won't, I'm leaving. I'm leaving and I'm never coming back. But someone has to stay. Someone has to keep the rules. Someone has to keep the gate locked. That was the last thing he ever wrote. I should have left then. I should have walked out of that house, gotten in my car, and driven back down to Louisville, and never thought about any of it again. But I didn't. There's a thing that pulls at people when they inherit a place, especially a place like this. Especially when the place has been kept so careful, maintained so precise, for reasons that nobody's been willing to explain. I wanted to understand. On the third day, I went to the orchard. It was north of the house, a path cut through the forest, marked with white stones. The fog was thicker than it had been, and the closer I got, the colder the air became. Not the kind of cold that comes from weather, but the kind of cold that comes from wrongness, from things that shouldn't be standing side by side. The orchard appeared through the fog all at once. One moment I couldn't see anything but white, and the next moment I was surrounded by trees with silver bark that looked like it had been polished by something small and patient and hungry. There were maybe 60 trees all told, set in precise rows. Not natural, you understand. Not the kind of planting that happens when someone scatters seeds. This was intentional. This was designed. And in between the rows, in the space beneath the branches, the fog was moving. Just the fog, I told myself. Just the fog. And the light is strange. And the trees are tall. And the light is falling at an angle that makes them look like they're leaning. But they were leaning. The fruit was small and dark, nearly black, hanging in clusters that looked heavy. Too heavy, maybe, for branches that looked thin as bone. And some of the fruit was warm. I could feel the warmth coming off them, even from a distance. Like there was something inside them that was generating heat. Like there was something inside them that was alive. The gate was at the far edge of the orchard. Iron, old, hung on hinges that looked rusted. But when I got close, I could see that the rust was only on the surface. Underneath, the metal was clean, maintained. The lock was the same, and there was no key in the lock. The key hung on a hook on a pole near the gate, hanging in plain sight like it was waiting for me. I didn't touch it. Instead, I stood there, and I let my eyes adjust to the light under the branches, and I tried to see what was beyond the gate. The fog was thicker there, It was like the gate was the border between two different places. On this side, the side where the sun could still touch, where the trees were real, and on that side, the other side, where the fog was thicker and the light came from somewhere that wasn't the sun. That was when I heard it, the sound like someone breathing through soil. It was coming from underneath, from the ground beneath the gate. And as I listened, I could hear the earth shifting, could hear something moving through the soil the way a fish moves through water. And I understood then. I understood what the rules meant. I understood why my uncle had kept the gate locked. Things were waiting on the other side. Not just the ones with no hands. Not just the thing with the children's hands that bent backwards. Other things. Older things. Things that had been waiting so long they'd forgotten what they were waiting for. Things that came up sometimes through the soil and looked around, and went back down when they realized it wasn't time yet. And the gate was what kept them on that side. The lock was what kept them in the soil. I backed away from the gate, slow, my eyes still on the space beneath it, on the dark soil where I could see the dirt moving, shifting, like something was pressing up against it from below, testing the density of the earth, checking to see if today was the day. It wasn't, but it was close. That night I made a decision. I was going to read every journal in that study, every page my uncle had written, every warning he'd left behind, because he had left them behind. He'd left them for me. The letter had said, "Keep the gate locked," but the journals had said everything else. The journals had told me why. What I learned, friend, what I learned from reading that man's terror written down in his own hand was this. The orchard was old, older than the house, older maybe than the ridge itself. My uncle hadn't planted those trees. Nobody had. They'd been there, growing in that hanging valley for longer than anybody could remember. The property had been in our family for 7 generations. 7. And in every generation, someone in the family line had lived there, had kept the gate locked, had read the rules, and had tried to understand them. My uncle had been the first one to break them. The first time it was an accident. He'd been young, 22 years old, and he'd been curious, the way young people are. He'd climbed the fence instead of using the gate. He'd tried to pick one of the fruits, and when he touched it, he felt something. Warmth, sure, but something else. Something like electricity running through his hand. And he heard a voice whispering from inside the fruit. His name. It had said his name. that had said it right, in his voice, using his accent, his cadence, his everything, like it had been listening to him his whole life, learning the way he spoke, and now it was trying on his voice for size. He dropped the fruit. It fell and burst open on the soil, and it wasn't fruit inside. It was something that looked like amber, and inside the amber something that looked like an eye was dissolving. And where the juice from the fruit touched the earth, the grass died. The grass died and the soil blackened, and he could feel the wrongness spreading down through the earth like a shock wave. He didn't open the gate after that, not for 30 years. He kept it locked, and he followed the rules, and he tried to forget what it had felt like to hear his own voice speaking from inside something that wasn't supposed to have a voice. But you can't forget something like that. You can't lock something away in your mind without wondering what would happen if you unlocked it. So when he was 52 years old, my uncle opened the gate. He kept it open for 3 days. The rules had been clear. Leave it open for those who have no hands. He did that. He left it open, and they came. He could hear them dragging through the fallen leaves outside his window at night. Could hear the wet, thick sound of their limbs pulling them through the soil. And when he finally closed the gate again, he heard something else. He heard them screaming. But something else came through that gate, friend. Something that wasn't one of the ones he was supposed to let through. Something that decided to stay. And after that, the rules started changing. Or maybe they weren't changing. Maybe he was understanding them different. The trees started appearing in his dreams, whispering to him through the roots, teaching him that the fruit wasn't fruit at all, that the orchard was a place where things were being grown, where something very old had decided to cultivate something new. And the gate wasn't to keep things in. It was to control what came out. Every October, when the harvest came, something emerged from the soil with the fallen leaves. Something that had been waiting, growing, developing inside the dark earth where nobody could see it. The gate regulated it, controlled it, kept it from happening too fast, too often, too chaotic. And my uncle, in his fear and his obsession, had learned to tend to it, to maintain the balance, to follow rules that had been written down by people who understood things that I, standing in that house, reading journals written in the dark, couldn't begin to comprehend. I didn't stay another night. I packed what things I'd brought and I locked the house, every door, every window. But before I left, I took a knife from the kitchen and I went to the hook by the orchard gate and I cut the rope that was holding the key. I took the key with me. And I drove down that mountain, and I haven't been back. I live in a different state now, different everything. I changed my name legally. I don't talk about the property. I don't answer letters from lawyers. The house has sat empty for near about 30 years now, and I don't know what's happened to it. I don't know if the gate is still locked. I don't know if someone else in the family has found it, opened it, taken over where my uncle left off. But I know this. Whoever inherits that place next, whoever finds that letter with "Keep the Gate Locked" written at the bottom, they're going to face the same decision, the same curiosity, the same slow understanding that the rules exist for a reason. And friend, listen now, because this is important. You listen to me. If you ever find yourself on a high ridge in Appalachia, if you ever see trees with silver bark growing in a perfect row, if you ever find a gate standing alone in the forest, with fog thicker on one side than the other, don't open it. Don't touch the fruit. And don't ever listen to what the roots have to say in your dreams. Some things are locked away because they belong locked away. Some rules are written in blood and terror because the people who wrote them understood bone deep what happens when you break them. Wind howling through branches. Keep the gate locked, friend. Keep your own gates locked too. You understand? There are more kinds of gates than the ones you can see. More kinds of locks. More things trying to get through. Stay safe. Stay awake. And if you ever find yourself dreaming of standing in an orchard where the light comes from nowhere, where the fruit is warm, where you can hear your own voice calling to you from inside the trees, you wake up. You wake up right now, and you keep that gate locked. Only rain now, heavy, persistent, endless. End transmission. Archive case file 063. Status: active, unexplained.